Hey everyone, welcome to the Good News Podcast, and really going to get into a conversation here that I think you're going to enjoy at so many levels. This is Roni Beharry with us today. Roni is our new minister at North Bramley United Church. She's just come on our staff, and we've been waiting for Roni to come for almost a year, so we're so excited to have her. Roni's role is Minister of Discipleship, and you'll just catch this, I think, in this conversation. This is such an area that is so close to her heart and so right for her. I love in this conversation, we get to some practical realities as far as just even getting to know Roni and this transition for her, and things like what kind of TV shows she watches and what she does for exercise. I love the realness of it, but we also go real deep into some pretty significant conversations around racial justice and reconciliation work. And I know I was blown away. My mind has been expanded. My heart has been expanded. My desire for this work has grown through this conversation. Friends, I hope yours does as well. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome to the Good News Podcast. I have with me today Roni Beharry. Roni is our new minister, our Minister of Discipleship at NBUC, North Bramley United Church, and really excited to sit down with Roni today and talk about a number of things, including this huge transition, Roni. And when we think about what's happened here as you enter into life at NBUC, I'm sure people know all about transitions these days because the pandemic has brought so much change. But for you, I'd love to just jump in there. What's it been like for you to enter into such a significant transition as you've come on to be part of the staff and team here in ministry at NBUC?
I think what's helped me to process lots of difference, Jamie, is the fact that I'm curious about difference. And people are so warm and friendly. The retreat certainly helped me to get to know about how people arrived here at NBUC, and to know what's in their heart in terms of their commitments to self and to the church. And so it was a great place to have those conversations and then to connect one-on-one with folks at the church, to have had a few meetings with you as well. And just to meet the congregation. People are so warm and caring, and just being patient with myself, listening to my body, knowing when I need to rest, when I need to say, okay, I've had enough for today, and just staying grounded in the things that help to keep me feeling calm and fully present. So exercise does that. Daily devotions, they do that for me as well. Family.
Yeah. These rituals, these habits, disciplines that are part of your life, they become even more important, I think, through a time of transition and change. And I think during the pandemic, a lot of us have experienced that, where these ways that we try to stay healthy on a daily basis have become more important than ever before. So yeah, really encouraged to hear that's part of your life, and certainly part of this transition, as well as just what you do overall to stay healthy. You mentioned, Roni, just the awareness of your energy, and love to tap into that a little bit more and talk about that if you're okay with that, because I think sometimes we aren't aware of our energy, and we're not aware of whether we're tired or what we're going through. And I think going through something new, my sense is that really can be a draining period. And so what is it like for you to be aware of that? And what are some of the cues that you pay attention to, that you might even know that you're tired? Think, okay, when that's happening, I need to be aware that I'm getting a little tired. I'm just monitoring my energy, especially during some things like now we're going through so many new things. So how do you monitor that? How do you manage that? How do you even what is it you're aware of when you talk about recognize you were tired or trying to manage your energy? Yeah.
So I remember during the first week going home and feeling mentally tired, right? Just mentally tired and physically tired. And just realizing, okay, I need to do something else.
Okay.
Like do something that that I really enjoy, like maybe watch a great TV show or exercise, go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
I do that sometimes. And yeah, just get my mind off all these new things that I'm trying to understand or work through, and just do something that feeds me. That's all about me and my needs and my refueling. So sometimes that's an activity. Sometimes it's watching TV. Sometimes it's exercise. Sometimes it's a nap.
Yep. Yeah. Love it. I love it. Well, I love how real that is, because I think sometimes people think, Roni is a minister, Reverend Roni Beharry, and otherworldly, not even human. And just recognize that. I love that you've just so beautifully named you are human. And these are these real things that other people do are also the kinds of real things that you do to be re-energized, to be healthy. I love, one leader once said, he said, we are in charge of our own inspiration, and I hear that, you like just managing that, monitoring that, and then choosing what you need to do that day or that week to really kind of get refueled and re-energized. Love to hear, Roni, just even getting down to the practicality of, when you watch TV or when you watch whatever you watch, what kind of things do you watch? What do you do at the gym? Like when you go out to exercise, what does exercise look like for you? I just think people, because I think often we just don't get to that level, and be fun to just hear a bit about that too, if that's
so
okay.
What do I look at on TV? I look at sitcoms.
Okay.
So the Young Sheldon series.
Absolutely.
I looked at the Young Sheldon series.
That's great.
What else do I look at? I look at Full House. I think it's cute. Yeah, those are among some of my favorites. I just like to laugh. And if I can find something that's somewhat clean or mostly clean,
sure, yeah,
then I have a good laugh.
Nice.
And when I go to the gym, I do about 10 minutes of cardio on the treadmill, and I work out with light weights.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Just trying to, I used to go regularly up until the pandemic. And then during the pandemic, most gyms were closed. So I just started going back. So it's almost like trying to rebuild, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I enjoy, seeing people that I used to connect with before I moved to North Bay. So I have a friend, Linda, who still goes to the gym.
Nice.
From way back when.
Yeah,
and so we, just say hi, and even just the energy of people working out around you.
Yeah.
I quite enjoy that. And then at home, when I'm not at the gym, I just turn on some fun music on YouTube and just work out.
Nice.
I have some free weights at home too as well.
Okay. Yeah.
And
That's cool. I love that. I love how you can meet people at the gym, a grocery store, classes that you do outside of the church, and those relationships are really life-giving and important as well. So cool. Well, Roni, one of the things I know that is important to our ministry here at NBUC, and I know you share the passion for this, and as we come through Black History Month, it's a time where it's on even more people's radars, but just really the work towards racial justice and reconciliation. And I'd love to talk a bit about that today, and just hear your heart around that, why that's important to you, how God is in the midst of that conversation and work that we've been called to do together.
Okay. Well, first, I just need to clarify my own history, because
nice. Yeah.
I am a racialized person. But traditionally, Black History Month has been around the history of Black Canadians and Black Americans, African Americans, and Afro Canadians. So I'm not going to tell you the whole history, but between 1845 and 1917, after the emancipation of slavery, my people came to the Caribbean, and specifically my ancestors came to Trinidad and Tobago. So my paternal ancestors came directly. My maternal ancestors came through another small island. And speaking of my paternal ancestors, from my dad's side, they came from a region of India known as Bihar. So my name is Beharry, named after the region, Bihar, which was a town in Bengal,
Hmm.
and they came as indentured laborers. What that meant is that they would receive a small wage. It's generally people from the lower castes who came, so they didn't have much of they didn't have much of a future in India. So they were recruited to come, and they stayed in the same barracks as slaves. Men were separated from their wives and their children, so you can imagine that there was some stress.
Yeah.
There was a degree of systemic oppression, but it was not slavery. So the histories are unique. As I mentioned, the places where they stayed were the same places where the slaves stayed. They experienced, to some degree, racial discrimination from the colonizers, as well as some internalized racism and conflict with the former slaves. But the history, it's a little bit different. And I don't want to get into that history now because we're here to talk about Black History Month. And Black History Month is about stories. The story that I enticed you possibly to know more about.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about that later in the year, I'd be happy.
Okay.
In my home country on May 30th, my home country is Trinidad and Tobago, we celebrate Indian Arrival Day.
Indian Arrival Day.
Indian Arrival
Day.
Day.
Okay, wow.
When we remember the East Indians who came as indentured laborers.
Okay.
So obviously, some completed their 5 years, and I think there was something like a 10-year residency. They had the option to go back, but many, if not most, stayed. Because by then you can imagine that there was a lot of distance and separation from your families.
Yeah.
So my ancestors obviously stayed.
Wow. Yeah. So how has that impacted your upbringing, your family, your traditions, just those cultures coming together? How has that been weaved and worked into your life as you look back?
Well, my dad is a Christian, but he came from a Hindu family who chose, and he himself chose Christianity later in life. My mom's family, they like her Christian faith of origin goes back at least 2 generations to her great grandmother, who was Roman Catholic. My great grandfather, his name was David Ramuta, who was a lay preacher in the church. He would have been converted by Presbyterian missionaries who initially came in 1868. John Morton was the first missionary to come, and they formed an alliance with the government because Indians, as I told you, were living with a degree of systemic oppression, and they were not formally educated. And so the Presbyterians from Canada, Nova Scotia, they had been involved in establishing a mission through education, I think somewhere in India. So they had that experience. And they came to Trinidad. The government would benefit because they would educate the East Indians. And the East Indians would have an opportunity to be converted to Christianity. So some of the East Indians, all of the East Indians, I should say, embraced the education. And for those who didn't choose Christianity, they still saw God at work through education, liberating them and offering opportunities where they could live into their full potential, where their kids could become doctors and lawyers and teachers, because some of them actually came to Canada to study as well.
Amazing.
And so they still received the liberation, and many East Indians as well. So my family, or some of my family, became Presbyterians. So my background is actually Presbyterian.
Okay. Wow. But you have Christian and Hindu background.
Yes.
So would you, what has been the impact on your faith? I'm just having both those backgrounds. And do you have family still in India?
Maybe I do, but I don't know my
That's a long
family.
time. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So how is recognizing that's part of your history and how you've got to where you are today, how has God worked through all of that?
How has God worked through all of that? Well, God has worked through all of that because I think I'm well rooted in my tradition as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus. And the story that I was going to allude to through the gospel to talk about why racial justice and reconciliation is important. In a way, it sets the tone for what I understand as a person of faith involved in interfaith and interracial engagement. It helps to explain why I am the way I am. And it also explains why Christians should be committed to this work. In this story, right? Jesus had just finished explaining to the scribes and Pharisees that, you talk about what a person puts into their mouth, that if they didn't wash their hands and they ate, that they're defiling their bodies and not following the commandments of God. But it's what comes out of your heart that matters, right? And he goes on to say that, you have certain traditions that actually have become oppressive. Like there was one called Korban, where you could say that the money or the finances that I should give to my parents to help them, if I offer it to God, you're saying, so the priest would say, if you offer it to God, you can say that I don't have to take care of that parental obligation because I offered it to the temple. I offered it to God. So your excuse. And Jesus was saying, no. No, fulfilling God's law of love is more important. Now, getting back to what I was trying to explain about how my faith relates to this interfaith view and what it means to be a Christian, but with Hindu family, the law of love is the most important thing. And in this little story where Jesus enters after that conversation, and I hope this thread is making sense, he enters into the house of a Gentile woman, right? And he does something that I think we all can learn from. It's a bit shocking because we see a human side of Jesus. And we all have assumptions about our beliefs, right? Because along with our belief comes a limited understanding. We grow in understanding as we relate to others. So in his day and time, right, he believed that his mission was limited to the Jews. But the Spirit was working in him and working in this woman who was a desperate parent seeking healing for a child. And she came begging Jesus. And he used maybe the crude language of the day to say, no, we got to feed the children first. Can't take the children's food and give it to the dogs. And what I learned from Jesus as a Christian relating to my Hindu ancestors and my Muslim friends is just because your worldview or what you were taught isn't the same as the other person's worldview, just because you're challenged, that's not the time to shut down. That's the time to open up your heart and listen. Because God may be trying to speak to you. God may be trying to deepen your understanding of what God is doing now. And that woman obviously the Spirit is working through her, empowering her to say, but don't the dogs eat the scraps of the table? I believe. I believe. And I admire Jesus because he doesn't walk away from the conversation. He stays into the conversation. We don't get a lot of the dialogue from Matthew 7, verse 24 to 30. We don't hear a lot of the back and forth thing, but I think there's a lot of back and forth thing that goes on there. And that table that he was talking about, where the children are fed and the dogs are underneath, that becomes a table for reconciliation. So my approach with my Hindu relatives and my Muslim friends is I know what I believe and I know who Jesus is. And if Jesus can allow and make space for his sense of mission and purpose to deepen, and if his Spirit resides in me, then I can make space for that sense of purpose and mission to deepen within me. And that our table, our communion table, our proverbial table of fellowship can indeed be a table of reconciliation where stories are heard. And we may not see everything the same way. All of our beliefs may not be the same. But there are moments of grace where our understanding of God and God's mission expands. And I experienced that in my personal life. I had Hindu family, but I went to a Muslim school as well. And I experienced that as well after 9/11.
Oh, wow. Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe, because I'd love to hear a bit about your own real life experience around this, Roni. Yeah, please.
I kind of sense that maybe you want to know more about the 9/11 experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, around 9/11, I mean, I was a student at Emmanuel College. I was working not as an ordained minister, but as an outreach minister in Rexdale at Martin Grove United Church. And I would take the bus back and forth. And I remember one day in trying to engage in conversation with a Muslim woman, and I could just feel the anxiousness. And I realized that 9/11 was a pretty bad thing, and many people died. But that one of the fallouts of it, and one of the harmful fallouts, was Islamophobia. That Muslims were living with a sense of fear because you were also hearing of hate crimes. And so for me, the love of Jesus at work in my own heart said, this is the time for more dialogue.
Absolutely.
And I helped that local congregation to connect with a local mosque so that we could have an imam and some people from the mosque come over to the church.
Amazing.
And share about their faith. And then we had food and fellowship and a time to know one another. And I think when you live in a community as diverse as Brampton, knowing one another, the opportunity is there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I so agree. And some of the things that you've talked about, it seems to me from Jesus' story of opening himself up to others that maybe others weren't open to at the time, to your own experiences. I love that phrase, open up our hearts, open up ourselves to listen and understand and deepen our connection with people, especially people who are different from ourselves and who have different stories and different histories. I just really love that idea. I think it's part of the movement and work that God is calling us to in this city. As you say, Roni, like Brampton is as diverse as any place you'll ever find. And what does, maybe we could talk about what does that look like in practice? I think some people, hopefully more and more people over time, are opening themselves up to these conversations, actually wanting to have these conversations, wanting to learn and grow and again, work for reconciliation, for connection, for a human life together. But I think sometimes people wonder, well, how do I go about that? What does that look like in practice? And so I'd love to just maybe talk a bit about that from your own experience, but also just as you envision what the future might be and how we can work together towards this, what that might look like for absolutely a church community, but even maybe just down to the level of an individual person, an individual. How do we work at this? Mm-hmm.
Jamie, I think there are two parts to it, right? So we want to create spaces where we can know each other. But going back to the scripture, Jesus models something for us, right? That is kind of underwritten into the text. We need to be ready to have our assumptions examined, right? And to allow the Spirit to work. So we need to create spaces where we can talk about Christian privilege. Like an example of Christian privilege is we get Christmas off, right? We get Easter off. If you're from a different faith, if you're a Hindu or a Muslim, you have to negotiate with your employer to get those holy days off, right? And you may or may not get them off. That's privilege.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And we have to be willing to examine our privilege. Black History Month is coming up. We have to be open to the conversations, just as Jesus was, to examine, okay, so what is white privilege? It simply is. We need to do the work of understanding how racism works, how privilege works, so that we can then envision what it means to be something different. Like, I love the work that the United Church did in, I think it was around 2006. They cast a vision for becoming an intercultural church. Now, for me, my understanding of intercultural, it builds on what the United Church did, but I look to Jesus because I see Jesus engaging interculturally, particularly in the story that I lifted up, which for those of you listening would be the story of Jesus encountering this Syrophoenician woman. Jesus engages interculturally as Spirit works in that relationship. So we, if Jesus can do it, it takes courage to have his assumptions examined by the Spirit that was working there. We can do it. Jesus is with us. And if we're willing to have our assumptions examined, then we create a more authentic space for ourselves and the person that we're in dialogue with to truly know one another, to be blessed by each other, to experience a kind of mutuality where barriers become a channel for communication and we leave with an enlarged sense of God's mission and of what reconciliation is.
Love that.
You see, I see reconciliation being formed into the heart of Jesus, and it can be formed into our hearts too. As followers of Jesus.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Roni. I just really love that vision and that connection to Jesus' heart becoming our heart as we really be honest about our assumptions, and there's a humility that comes with that, I think, isn't it? That I haven't got all figured out. I'm learning about, but there's a humility that's really important, a desire to really learn about other people who are different from us and their history, and really, really love the vision of that you've offered here. And you mentioned a term, Christian privilege, white privilege, and I think the more we get used to recognizing the reality of it, that was a great example.
Yeah, and I have privilege too. Like I speak English, right? There's privilege that goes with that.
Yeah.
I have 2 degrees, right? I've lived in Canada since 1985.
Yeah.
I have privilege as well.
Yeah.
Some of that privilege I've earned. but white privilege is generally unearned. It simply is.
And certainly, even if people have done things to maybe earn some of the kinds of things you're talking about, whether it be an income or whether it be a status or a job, there is a sense of having had an opportunity for that because of your color. That that's certainly underneath all that as well. Can we talk a bit about what do you do with that? I think sometimes people wonder. Some people, I think, still struggle with understanding that, and fair enough. Let's keep talking about it, and we'll come to a deeper understanding of what these terms mean around privilege. But even if one is at the point where they're recognizing, okay, that's what that means, I think people wonder, what do I do with that? How do I bring change? Recognizing that, what do I do with this? Because I can tell you've, and I know you've thought a lot. You've been working at this, and really, really appreciate that. I love that you're bringing that to our community, both here in this church, but also in this city as we work at this. But any thoughts on that? Like, what do we do once we recognize, there's a privilege that I have that not everyone has? What do we do with that? Mm-hmm.
Well, privilege simply is privilege. There's no judgment attached to it. It's good to name it. It's good, like it's not blaming.
Yeah.
It's naming.
Yeah, I love that, because I think people do feel guilty, feel blamed, shame in some ways once they acknowledge that. I love how you just expressed that. Thank you. Sorry to cut you off, but I just really love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's naming it, and then. Like I've been involved in project work. I've worked with the Canadian Churches Forum for Global Mission. I'm so grateful for them, because I had been introduced to them in preparation for a trip that I did to Trinidad as an intern for 3 months, returning to my home country. I had to do some preparation work for going to a country other than Canada. And then around the same time when I came back, within a few years, they changed their focus, because more people were going to different countries. Canada was becoming more diverse, right? And so they were doing work around, how do we train people to engage diversity in positive ways? And so we can use the privilege we have to be an ally, to be a part of the healing process. I had experienced systemic racism in my own life too as well. And I am going to keep some of that confidential, but some of that was within the church, within local congregations that were not used to racial difference in visible roles in ministry, not at that time. And so out of that experience, and out of the experience of being a little bit more educated about race and racial justice, what I chose to do was and was invited to do as well, was to become a part of a team of designers for a program called Deepening Understanding for Intercultural Ministry. So I was given the opportunity to bring my experience and to receive some training in how to develop educational programs, experiential programs for adults, and to be part of a writing team, and to also be involved in some co-facilitation work. So we can take the areas of our life where we experience some woundedness. And it's amazing that God that when we reflect on those experiences, that God can use those experiences as well as the gifts or the talents that we have in our lives to be a blessing. And out of that, to create a sense of purpose. And I feel like I've moved further from your question. So if you want to reorient me, you can feel free.
You're good. You're good. No, Roni, just thank you. I have great gratitude that God has called you to North Bramley United Church here and part of the team. I love how you've expressed this today and what you're bringing to this community, both here we believe that the church is really meant to be a beacon of hope and light in the community as Jesus's followers. And today, and I just really see you helping us, not only in this conversation, which is so important, it's a great place to start, but we want to lead to change and action, and just love what you've offered. It's some really significant things grounded in the gospel, as far as we can name these things and move forward together and try to work past some of our assumptions and find healing, and just a togetherness. That's, I think, beautiful, the way God designed the world to be, and I just really appreciate how you've shared that today. So thanks so much, Roni, and would love to close with the Good News Podcast, a little rapid fire here,
Sure.
if we could. So let's have some fun with this one, if that's all right. What's the best thing going on in your home and your family these days?
The best thing going on is I just have this incredibly supportive spouse. I'm trying to be an incredibly supportive spouse by getting us signed up to be a part of the Hamilton Astronomy Club.
Beautiful.
So we're aiming to go to the February meeting, which is the second Wednesday of the month.
That's
so
great.
Hopefully that's where we'll be.
That's
second
awesome.
Wednesday of February.
That's awesome.
Of February.
Great. Very cool. What's the best thing going on in your neighborhood, in your community?
In my neighborhood. Well, I was up north for Black History Month in the last couple of years. And there might have been some opportunities, but there are more here. So I saw an opportunity to attend a concert on February 4th at Port Nelson United Church. That's the venue. But they are featuring the music of Black artists who performed at the Brant Inn, which is a historic place in Burlington. So I'm kind of hoping to be able to take in that activity.
Very cool. That's awesome. And finally, the best thing going on in our world these days?
Hard to pin that down, but I celebrate the fact that the first female minister was ordained in the Holy Land. And I think that happened on the weekend.
Okay. Wow.
And that breaks a number of glass ceilings.
Something to celebrate. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Roni, thanks again. Love to say a prayer to close.
Sure.
Yeah. Loving and gracious God, my goodness, we have felt your presence in the midst of this conversation in a very, very real way. So thank you for Roni, for your work in her life, for calling her to this community, for her we can just hear and feel her passion for you, and for bringing about racial equality, for allowing us all to just be open to each other, to be open to ourselves, to name those assumptions, and to do it with a sense of grace, but also moving forward together in a new way. And so we just trust this conversation and this work that we entrusted to you, and that you will energize and enable us to be a part of it in whatever way you need us. Thanks again for this conversation. May everyone be blessed, inspired, encouraged, and even challenged too, as you lead us forward together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thanks again, Roni.
You're welcome.
So much. And thank you, everyone, for being a part of this conversation and a beautiful life together. May God bless you and be with you. Hope to see you again real soon.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone. Don't you just love Roni, man? I just loved her honesty, and I loved her passion for the gospel. You could just hear it in her voice. I really just come to respect and value and love that about Roni. The love of Jesus is just overflowing in her and through her, and just to be so passionate about some significant conversations And I just love the way that she's expressed some of these ideas, just so honest, humble, but very, very confident and courageous too. The idea of just recognizing our assumptions, and that has really hit me today, something that I want to spend some more time on. It's so easy to surface. It's so easy to miss the fact that we all have these assumptions about people who are different from ourselves, and just to be real about them, to name them, to have enough conversation to even recognize them. Those terms that I know sometimes are hard to hear. Christian privilege, white privilege, but really appreciate the way that Roni named those realities. And as she did, I found myself thinking I can name that too, and be okay with that. I love the grace that came with Roni's encouragement to not feel guilty or bad about these things, but just to be aware of them and to recognize them. That's not only the first step, but probably the most important step, and everything will flow from there. This whole idea, I guess, was at the heart of the conversation, was just being open, having open hearts, open minds to other people, to their experiences and their past, and that to each other. I just want to leave you on that one, friends, that if we want to work together towards a more just racial reconciliation, getting along, connected, living and working and playing together with our neighbors who are different from us, maybe that is the key, to just have an open heart, to be open to others. And certainly Jesus, as Roni said so well in this conversation, has modeled that for us and will give us all that we need to live that out as well. Friends, can't tell you how much I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being a part of the Good News Podcast family. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Good News with Jamie Holtum. You can subscribe to the Good News Podcast. You can share this with your friends, especially if this has been an important conversation that you think they would be blessed by as well. Please do that. Friends, thanks again for being a part of all of this. God bless you, be with you. Hope to see you again real soon.